Welcome to Journey with Dr. J, a special series within Ready, Set, Grow, College, and beyond. Today, we're joined by Dr. LaToro Yates, a dynamic higher education leader whose story takes us behind the scenes of what it really means to rise against the odds. From unseen sacrifices to the weight of visibility, this conversation is real, raw, and necessary. If you've ever questioned what it takes to thrive against the odds, lean in. Let's get into it. I will allow him to provide you with his current title and a little bit of background before we dive in.
My name is Dr. LaToro Yates. I am currently the Vice President for Enrollment Services at Kean University, so I'm fairly new. It's been exciting. Dr. Lamont Repillette is a leader that believes in building leaders. So when I got an opportunity to come and work with him, it was a no-brainer for me. And I really get to continue to work with the students that's been at the forefront of my career, which is first generation students, students like myself.
What's your goal when working with students?
And my goal, or I dare say, my ministry, if you will, is to simply help younger people make slightly better decisions that I did at different age. I'm Unc, and I'm that guy who is really going to be able to sit, give you a good 5 minutes, and tell you the parts of it where I failed. And the parts where I failed is what propelled me to continue to keep going. And that's what I want to do. So when people are moving and you get to that point where you are stuck and you've given it all you got and you're ready to quit. And that's the moment where I want to be able to have a word or two that can help that person keep going because there is light on the other side.
Thank you. And I really appreciate that. As a first generation college student, I will say we are definitely a unique population. That was a part of the reason why I originally started this podcast, while also acknowledging that second generation students aren't necessarily that much better off, especially if they're coming through a family that they were the first generation. So they were likely winging it, which is what which was what I was doing. And I was like, oh, I wish I knew a lot of things on the front end. Yeah, I'm excited about this conversation. And to me, every failure is really an opportunity to learn and grow, especially if you don't internalize the failure as reflective of your ability.
That's the hard part because when you're a first generation student, I dare say second generation, you're still trying to overcome imposter syndrome. Then you can internalize that from everyone in my family or community. Why am I the one? I call it the chosen one syndrome. So out of all these people,
Mm.
why was I the one who was given this opportunity? So it creates this additional layer of pressure that we will face as we're making these decisions. And if anyone has heard any speech I've given over the years, I will tell you, I went to college at 17 and I was winging it. Like I was making this up as I go. And what made me laugh about it is that when I kind of turn to the side and I look behind me, it's so many people from my mother, my two older brothers, cousins, people in the community, little kids in the community, and everybody was just like, yes, yes, go, go, go. And I was making it up and it worked out, but it was definitely not the best way to go about it. So now that I do have this knowledge, I want to make that route easier.
I think it would be helpful to parents and students to have an example of you winging it and what you learned from that experience.
When I went away to college, by leaving the state, I left the tag tuition aid grant, which is about at that time it was probably high, maybe $9,000, $10,000, something like that. I left that grant in New Jersey because the state grant doesn't travel with you. And so going away to college, I'm three, four states away. I'm at this university. I'm living off campus. My grandmother lived about 30 minutes away from the campus. And it was a moment of food insecurity, housing insecurity, all these different things I was experiencing. A lot of it was predicated on me making I would say a poor decision, but it was a 17-year-old making a decision about leaving and going out of state. I could have had the same going away feeling or experience by the time living in Jersey City. I could have went to South Jersey to go to college. I could have went to Northwest New Jersey to go to college. I could have went down to the shore area in New Jersey to go to college. I could have went down the street at NJCU and stayed on campus. and got that experience. So those are the type of nuggets that I like to talk to families about when students are making those decisions.
Thank you. I appreciate that example, and it definitely brought back memories. I also started college at 17. And I was on the waiting list for housing. I didn't have a car. So I would ride to school sometimes with friends. But that second semester, I had an 8 o'clock class and I had to take two buses and a train to get to school. I would be at the bus stop before the sun came up.
Hmm.
And I remember telling my mom, like, mm-mm, I'm going to take a year off because I'm exhausted. And my mother was just like, no, because if you stop, you might not go back. In response to that, instead of going to another school in New Jersey, I went to Virginia. And that was a whole different experience. We weren't as financially savvy. I'll just say my dad got the plus loan for one semester, and the second semester, my grandmother was making monthly payments of like $800.
Well,
And once like that $800 a month was coming out, I really was like, all right, this is a lot.
it was a major sacrifice for your family.
Mhm.
I did similar things. And what I didn't realize at such a young age was the ramifications of what it meant back home.
Yeah.
So I'm away at school in Virginia, Virginia State University. And I remember calling home right before the semester started, and I needed, I forget the amount, but my family got together this amount. And I came home unexpectedly, and I go into the apartment, and there's no lights on in the apartment. And
Mhm.
I have a middle brother. He's the one in the family go always tell it like it is. He's that guy. And he was like, "Yeah, you needed money for school, so that's what we did. We got you money for school."
What was the impact of realizing the effects of your decisions on your family?
And that's when it became very sobering for me that these decisions that I'm making, they have major consequences, and I got to figure it out. So that just it put even more pressure on me going back to try to grow up in a way that if things are done in the right way, these moments of what I mean by grow up is a part of life, and you can do it, and there's no dire consequences attached to it.
That is a great point. Sometimes you don't realize where the sacrifice is actually coming from until the back end of the sacrifice. And yeah, I will say for me, the shift in that moment was okay, I don't want them to have to do that.
Yeah.
So after that, I remember I started working at 7-Eleven. I took out loans. I declared independence so so that they wouldn't have responsibility. Like there were just so many different things, but at the same time, I was definitely winging it, like
Yeah.
figuring it out in real time. And I will admit, I was winging it all the way through grad school. Even,
Yeah.
like, deciding to enter the PhD program
Sure.
was winging it. When I went to Howard, I wanted to be a lawyer. Now, if you recall, Virginia State didn't have a law school.
Hmm.
So, again, keeping in mind, like, this cost factor, when I was thinking about grad school, when I went, they had a stipend for the GRE, but nothing for the LSAT. And I
Yeah.
was like, "I'm gonna take the GRE because I can cut the cost." And then when I get to Howard, I'll just network, figure out the law school, and then I'll go that route. Long story short, I'm in the master's program, and one of my professors was just like, "Look, have you noticed lawyers aren't getting hired? You should just go into the PhD program." And I
Yes.
was like, "All right, I'll go into the PhD program." That conversation and him agreeing that he would chair my dissertation, and I just
Nice.
pivoted. And that was one of the things I learned throughout school was like the importance of being flexible,
Yes.
and being willing to pivot and recognizing that it might look different than what you planned, but you can still reach your goal if you just stick to it.
You talked about winging it through grad school. Let's discuss some of those experiences and what was your motivation for your current path?
I have, including certificates, I have 6 degrees. And
Mm.
I wish I could say I did all that on purpose. And it just really wasn't. And it was just kind of accounting undergrad. And then I talked to a classmate, and she had a double major. I was so impressed. And then she was like, well, at minimum, you should have a minor. I said, really? So I looked at it, and I only had to take a couple more classes. So I got a minor in
Mhm.
management. Then I did a double MBA, a double master's program in my MBA MIS. I had started talking about I want to become a doctor, when I was 17, and I saw this gentleman, Dr. Robert Perry from St. Peter's College at the time, and he was the head of, I believe, maybe like their social justice program or something like that there. But he ran a pilot program for the state of New Jersey called Pre-CAP, and it was like pre-college academic program where a cohort of students start together in their freshman year and they stay together, take all the same classes through graduation. And although I
Mhm.
wasn't in that program, to show you making it up as I go, at 13 years old, I opted out of the program. So that just show you where I was going with it. You say simple, I'm Southern simple at that. So, but Dr. Perry, I used to watch this man come into the school, and he's a black man, and I use the term getting tight. But what I mean by getting tight is that when he walked in, people could be talking and just kind of enjoying their day. When he came in, they did like this when he walked in the building, and I didn't quite understand it. So over 4 years, I got to see this man, and during the exit day ceremony, where the seniors, the day before, you do your practice for the next day's graduation. So when you're dismissed that day before, that's it for you, right? So I see him during the practice. He walks up to the stage. He has a microphone. He says, "Dr. Robert Perry," puts the mic down, turn around, walk away. I'm sitting in the front row, middle seat, looking up at this man, and the way he did it was so nonchalant. He wasn't even thinking about it. But I'm telling you, that was the moment where I said, I'm going to become a doctor. Now, I didn't
Mhm.
know what type of doctor. I didn't know what it took to become a doctor. I didn't know any of that. But what I realize now as an adult, as a black man, what I realized that 17-year-old kid was looking at what I would deem visible. Dr. Perry
Mhm.
was visible to white people, black people. I had never seen that before. And that's what I wanted, but I just equated it to him being a doctor. So from that moment on, I was talking about becoming a doctor. And it's interesting, I ran into a colleague of mine. We worked together at Kean University, and we were work study students together. And he remembered me talking about being a doctor. This is 92, 93. We recently saw each other. He brought that up. He said, "I want to congratulate you because when I saw you became a doctor, I remember those conversations." But yeah, that was
Mhm.
it. It was daring to dream before I knew how to. And there were a lot of people along the way that really helped me learn how to dream and what were the steps that were necessary to get to those different stages.
Mm. I appreciate you sharing that story. I think it's a great example of like the importance of representation,
Yes.
just being able to see yourself in someone else. I remember a few years back, Mr. Bates reached out and asked me if I would be interested in speaking at a graduation ceremony,
Yeah.
right? And when you talk about, I loved your point about the chosen one syndrome.
Yes.
I didn't speak at that ceremony. Let's open it with that. I did not speak, but I remember when he reached out, I was just like, what you want me to speak for? like what would I have to speak about? For me, I was still just Jennifer. Like, why
Yes.
would these students want to hear from me? And looking back, hindsight, I can see now at that point I had the chosen one syndrome,
Yes.
not recognizing that just my mere presence alone, and achieving becoming a doctor at 27, like, that in itself,
Big deal.
coming from where I came from,
Big
is a
deal.
big deal.
Big
But at
deal.
that point, I didn't see it.
Well, Bates is my fraternity brother, right? But I know Bates more than that. He was one of the guys in the neighborhood, and he was someone that looked out for younger people. He definitely searches out people of color who have secured their doctorate because he wanted to put us in front of those students. When he brought me to the school, and I really started to pick up speaking in different places. Well, what
Mhm.
I realized, although I was terrified a lot, what made me say yes, and I would get up there, and sometimes the things I would write down, I would say it differently, and my words are going so fast in my head, and I was doing all that because I wanted to be Dr. Perry for those little kids. But
Mhm.
what I realized later on that Dr. Perry, in the moment that he inspired me the most, didn't really say any words. It was the
Mhm.
visual of him that
Mm.
was what helped me define being visible.
Thank you for sharing that story about Dr. Perry and how he inspired you through his visibility. Can you share how you approach being visible, including any lessons learned that people who aim to be visible can take into consideration?
In my early days, I was constantly talking to young people. I'm 25 years old, Harlem, South Bronx, something outside of Chicago, and Carroll City in Miami. And I'm talking to young people, and I'm like, listen, I'm from Jersey City, and it's Jersey City all day. And I look at them, and I'm not playing. And they could see from my energy, they could see my ethos, like they could see that I'm
Mhm.
not talking to them from a place of judgment. So I realized I had to kind of connect from this kind of urban bona fides, right? So every speech I give, you do a quick Google search of me or go YouTube, three things I talk about. Sadie, who was my mother who raised three boys on her own. She was married by her husband was murdered. So here
Mhm.
she is at 26 years old with an 8-year old, a about to be a 5-year old, and like a 15-month-old.
Oh.
And this woman made it happen. I talk about Lincoln High School. Lincoln High School at the time when I graduated in 1989, there was a news documentary called Flunk City. And it talked about the Jersey City School District, and the state at that time took over Jersey City School District. And then the
Mm.
third thing is Jersey City. At the time, it's one of the worst cities in the country. So when I go there, that's the starting point. But then I learned over time, I can't stay in the pain part of it because
Mhm.
it became a point where I felt drained after every speech, reliving those moments. So then I
Mm.
realized I have to start shifting and talk about the things that help me stay visible. It's one thing for me to believe I'm visible, but how do I stay visible? How do I stay with a seat at the table? Because to do that, I had to learn impulse control. I had to learn that I belong there. I had to
Mhm.
learn that there were people coming behind me who needed me to succeed. Many of them thought, he made that step, I can make that step. So it's
Yeah.
putting all those things together, and it made me, to this day, part of me is winging it. But what I want to do is share information so the next generation that's coming up, they're not winging it.
Mhm.
That's the difference. And when you mention second generation sometimes being in a position where they are almost struggling as much as that first generation. But that's because there hasn't been a complete buy-in in what it means from the sacrifice of that first generation or the sacrifice of those that helped that first person in the family make it to that next level.
Thank you for sharing how you initially approached visibility, what you learned from that as far as the physical, mental, and emotional impact of doing so, as well as highlighting how you shifted that approach in response to your observations of the impact on you personally. I think it's important for people to recognize the impact of this type of approach, how to balance it, as well as being mindful of the energetic expense that it takes and how not to get trapped there. Thank you for that. That's a wrap on today's episode of Journey with Dr. J. If this made you reflect, you're not alone. Growth often comes through challenge, and every step you take matters. Know someone on their own journey? Share this episode with them. Want to go deeper or need support mapping out your next steps? Book a session at calendly.com/JMF Academy so that we can work together. Explore free resources, book a session, or tap into our workshops at jmfacademy.com. The next part of our conversation with Dr. Yates is fire. We're talking about the shift from surviving to thriving. Until then, keep growing, keep glowing, and keep showing up for you and your purpose.